Gonna get some mics in here in a minute. Father, we thank you for everything you've done. We thank you for how you blessed and kept us and watched over us. We ask your divine wisdom on this Bible study that we may learn and apply what we've learned to our lives, that we may live lives pleasing unto you. In Jesus' name I pray, thank God, and amen. All right, y'all, we're going to talk about something tonight that I think is very pertinent, and it is understanding the battle behind spiritual warfare. What? Understanding the battle that that is behind spiritual warfare. Now, I think this is very important because I don't know, and maybe you all can correct me because I'm not above being corrected. I don't know if we see as much stuff as spiritual warfare as we should. Do that make sense? I think some things has come in our lives under the disguise of worldliness when it's really a spiritual situation, just using worldly stuff to accomplish the goal, if that makes sense to everybody. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I hear people ask me so often about spiritual things that's going on with them, and sometimes I don't think we see spiritual stuff. Sometimes we become so comfortable with where we are that we don't realize oftentimes that we're being used, or oftentimes that we're being I mean think about this. Think about how many times somebody said something and you had made a nasty comment. I'll make it even easier than that. Think about the last time somebody said something and you made a negative comment. Didn't have to be nasty, just a negative comment. And you made the negative comment out loud, and whether you realize it or not, it affected those that were around. Because the enemy is so smart and so cunning that he's not going to waste time having you make a comment when it ain't going to affect nobody. Do that make sense to everybody? Everybody follow me? So, I think we need to understand. We talk about spiritual warfare and we talk about how it operates, and I think we're so busy jumping and shouting and running and speaking in tongues that we're overlooking the meat of the matter. I want to say it that way, the meat of the matter. And don't get me wrong, I got no problem with anybody want to run, jump, speak in tongues, and do whatever they want to do. But I think when it jumping and speaking in tongues and all that is over with. Today I had a meeting with some of the drivers, and we had a situation, and everybody kept talking about what upper management don't do. And I kept saying to them, I'm not concerned with what they don't do. Let's fix what we can fix. Do that make sense to everybody? So we have to ask ourselves when it comes to spiritual warfare, because, and let me tell y'all what we do. If we do one or two good things, we feel like I done made the cut. If people regard us as decent people, here I go. If people, give one to your sister. If people regard us as decent people, or oh, she's so sweet, oh, she's so nice, oh, she's so this, she's so that. The warfare tends to be less noticed. Am I making sense to everybody? I need to make sense, because guess what? That's what we want to hear people say about us. We want people to accept us. We want people, and if we're not careful, we'll find ourselves shaping how we move and shaping what we do based on what circle we're in, and according to how people will feel about us. So one of the things I was sitting in, I was sitting at my desk today. I said, God, we need to talk about this, but I don't understand. So God gave me to type into the computer this. And this came up, and I began studying it. So I figured it would be something good for us to discuss, understanding the battle behind spiritual warfare. What is that battle? What's really going on? So it starts out by saying, to understand the battle of spiritual warfare, we need to begin with acknowledging that we are in a war. And I need to ask you all this, and I need you all to be honest with yourselves. how many of us wake up every day understanding that this is a war? So when I go to work, if somebody say, it was so funny to me. Yesterday I was leaving work, and one of the mechanics said, Curtis, I'm mad with you, and I've been mad with you ever since before you went on vacation. And so I said to him, I said, first of all, you're assuming that I care about anything that's happening with you. So let's get that straight first. So if you were mad, I could care less. I need you to go and jump in front of a bus or something. So and I always talk to him like this, so we laugh. And he told me, he said, I said, so what you mad about? His name is Hayden. I said, Hayden, what you mad about? He said, well, a driver said to me that you told them not to write up something wrong with their bus, just wait till Friday. So I sit there and I said to him, I said, see, this is, and he's a white guy, so I said, this is why I don't deal with hillbillies. And he looked at me, he said, what? I said, this is why I don't deal with hillbillies. I said, because you can tell a hillbilly anything and they'll believe it. So then all of a sudden some more people came in. Now you got to understand that it's about 7 of us in the room now, and I'm the only somebody in there black. So they just kept saying, yeah, they said this and they said that. And then I said, finally, I give up. It was the black man. The black man did it. The black man said it. And all you hillbillies believe it. So I tell y'all, y'all wait right there. And I was standing by the door to go outside. I said, y'all stand right there. I got to get something. I'll be right back. I went and got my truck and came home. And when I got back to work this morning, Hayden came down. He said, you had us standing in there for about 35 or 40 minutes. I said, that's the life of a hillbilly. I don't know what I don't know what else to tell you. But one of the things, and I brought that up to say this, a lot of the problem that we have in our churches is, and in our Christian life is, we tend to forget that there's a war. We tend to forget, and guess what? The enemy is never going to forget that there's a war. The things that you're going through, the things that, and we always talk about, spiritual warfare, and we talk about it real good when the subject comes up. But then when the subject comes up and the subject goes away, then all of a sudden we forget that we're still in the midst of this spiritual warfare. So before we can actually understand the battle, we got to acknowledge that, first of all, we're in a war. It says battles make up smaller components of a bigger picture. By definition, battles involve comeback between two persons, between factions, between armies, and they consist of any type of extended contest, struggle, or controversy. Listen to this, though. As Christians, we're in a spiritual battle of some sort on a daily basis. I like when he put in there, he said, of some sort. Why do you think that's important? It comes in all kinds of ways. Now, the reason that's important is the devil lulls us into believing that he's going to keep coming in this direction, when in fact, he's coming in another direction. And a lot of times, the way the devil gets at us is so subtle that we don't even realize that he's even working on us. We think we're intact. And oftentimes, when we think we're intact, I remember I had when I went to smoke jump, one of the things Hump used to always say, when you're fighting a fire and you feel like you're safe, is when you're in the most danger. Because as long as the fire is burning, you're never safe. So as long as the enemy is the enemy, guess what? We're never safe, and we're never where we think we are. Listen at this part. It says, in warfare, battles are fought on different fronts for different reasons and with varying degrees of intensity. The same is true in the spiritual warfare. Our spiritual battles and warfare are real, even though we cannot physically see the attacker, but we can educate ourselves on how the battles are fought and how they impact our lives on a daily basis. That one of the reasons we find ourselves find it hard to understand that we're in a spiritual warfare is we cannot physically see the enemy. Who agree with that? Who disagree? Well, if you understand that, I was hoping everybody raised their hands real high, because I was going to hit y'all with this. If you understand that we cannot see the enemy, why are you mad with that person that just said something to you? Get a mic, or are you on? I need you to fix it. I don't know.
It's not so much that you see the person, because once you see something,
Derek, can y'all hear her back there? Is that a up or down? Yeah, it's a down. I pray that you hear me. Try the other one. I don't know. Well, Derek will be back sooner or later. So let's go ahead on. If y'all can't hear it, you should have been here. Go ahead.
it's not so much that you can see, because even though most of us function based on what we see,
Uh-huh.
but there's that inner drive that tells you this is the enemy.
Okay.
The way, not so much the verbiage, but yet the verbiage comes. If you listen to the enemy, his verbiage is totally strange, even though he tries to make it where it works in your gift.
Mhm.
If the Holy Spirit was working, you can discern.
But I agree with you, but let me get at you about this part. You're absolutely right. There should be something that says this is the enemy, but our this is oftentimes somebody we can see.
And that's true, because what do? Based on we are from Missouri.
Right. Show me.
I gotta see it.
So what happens is if I say it's Mother Stephanie, then I miss the enemy. Right, because that's what we do. We tend to say that it's you that's bothering me. It's really not you. You are a tool that the enemy is using. So I walk around with how many of us are sitting in here right now mad with somebody in our life, some person in our life, some fraction in our life, and guess what? It has absolutely positively nothing to do with them, but it's all about spiritual warfare. But we don't see it as spiritual warfare because what I've attributed to this person, it has nothing to do with him, because he or she is just being used of the enemy. So therefore, the understanding of spiritual warfare never enters our mind, because I'm too busy fighting a fleshly fight. And what oftentimes happens is we want to take a fleshly solution and fix a spiritual problem, which is never going to work. No, that's my sister. Hey, sis. And you're right, mother. And see now, so what she said, well, so Pastor, what are you trying to convince me of? What I'm trying to convince you of is we don't fight spiritually because we're too in tune fleshly. So the term spiritual warfare never kicks in. Because I'm too busy trying to get back at this dude, or get back at this chick, or get back at these people. When you're at work and somebody's always doing something to you. I said something to my assistant today. I say, people don't know what to do with us now. And she said, what do you mean? I said, because we get along. She said, what do you mean? I say, we don't always agree, but we found a way to coexist. People are used to us fighting all the time. Now we don't fight the kids, and I always say it like this, the kids don't see us fighting. Yeah, we have our issues, but when we have our issues, we go into a room, and we've had arguments like this. I don't care what you say. It's going to be like this. You ain't the boss. We had those arguments. Instead of being loud and, I ain't got nothing. Instead of being loud, give it that one. Instead of being loud and obnoxious, and everybody hear everything that's going on. But then one of the things that helped me was, I remember one day I have a driver, and she's very spiritual, and she said to me, she said, I need you to pull off your shades. And I was sitting at my desk, I was like, if you don't get out of my office with that old crazy stuff. She said, no, Curtis, I'm serious. I need you to pull off your shades. She said, as much as you know about the enemy, you still don't see that the enemy doesn't work here. And I thought about that thing, And it changed how I looked at stuff. So what I'm saying is, how many of us, see, if the enemy can always have us fighting fleshly, then the real issues that we need to have fixed in our lives will always go unchecked. It's like taking your car to the car dealership, and all they ever do is put new tires on it, but it won't crank. That's insanity. I go one step further, doing the same thing, thinking I'm fixing it, thinking I'm really fixing it. Because guess what we do in the church? We get real deep. We get real deep, and then after we've gotten so deep, we lie to ourselves like it ain't no big deal. It is a big deal. Because there's a battle within the spiritual warfare for us to, first of all, acknowledge that I'm in a war. And Frank, you've been in the Army. Who goes into a war and relaxes all the time? So soon as stuff get pretty good for us, we drop out. If we ain't got nothing pressing, we drop our guard. I can promise you, Tiff, soon as things start good for you, all of a sudden they hit you with something. Just out of the blue. And anybody ever been sucker punched? That's one of the worst feelings in the world. That's one of the worst, to just be sitting somewhere, you ain't got your guard up, you ain't on guard, you don't know what's going on, somebody just walk up and bust you in the stomach. You don't even get a chance to flex your muscles. How many people realize that's one of the main tricks of the enemy? And when you think everything is all right, the devil gets so mad with you, he don't know what to do, and then he'll send something. He knows exactly what to send. You know why? Because we never see it as we should see it. Because once you start seeing this situation as a spiritual situation, he changes up and he comes from this side. But at all times we have to acknowledge the fact that, guess what? I'm in a spiritual battle and ain't no telling how he coming. Let's go on. It says we have to ask ourselves, why do we even want to fight this spiritual warfare? It will do us no good to educate ourselves on the battle if we see no reason to fight it. I don't know how Frank, Mother Frisco, who else in here? Another preacher in here. Myra. I don't know how y'all feel. But don't sometimes you feel like you're butting your head against the wall? Don't you feel like that? People that call you and they'll say, well, Curtis, this is what's going on, and then you bring, because I'm a big proponent of this. Once I give you the knowledge that's needed for this situation, it should start regulating itself. Because once I realize that this is not a worldly fight that I'm fighting, because sometimes the best of us have to be brought back to where we're supposed to be. Because according to who's getting at you, they'll take you out your hookup. And sometimes you have to have people around you that repeat it over and over and over. Because sometimes we can't repeat your own stuff. How many people realize that sometimes you don't want to hear what nobody got to say? Come on, Myra. And it does depend on who's telling you. And the reason, and I keep saying this to people all over the place, all over the city, the person with your deliverance is usually the person you can't stand. Because the enemy understands you won't hear them. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say. Why do you think most of us in here got kids? You ever said something to your child and then they don't listen to nothing you said, then they go somewhere and somebody else say it verbatim? And she be like, oh, you know. But what the enemy has done is, because last time I talked to Mika told me, she said, Pastor Dad, you is right. And I said, I'm not telling you something you don't know. I'm not telling you something that you haven't been told. So we have to be careful when we allow people. Somebody get your Bibles out and find Matthew 28:18 before I get there. We have to be very careful so that when we get to where when that word does come, we're ready for that word to be a delivering word, because now it triggers the real deal. This is a spiritual warfare. I'm feeling like this about that person because the devil know I'm about to minister. I'm feeling like that because the devil knows that if he can keep me hindered, then guess what? He can keep that person enslaved. Let's go on. It says, those attitudes, now war is very controversial today in the physical realm. Those attitudes, beliefs, and convictions will transfer over to the spiritual realm. However, in the spiritual realm, there's a battle going on regardless of your opinion. I tell people, I done told people, they said, I don't believe in God. I said, that ain't going to make hell disappear. It doesn't matter. You don't have to believe. And then people say, well, you don't know. I say, you don't either. But I think God has done. Because you one or the other. I promise you, you one or the other. You have the opportunity to be the victor, but a lot of times we're victims. And I don't mean playing victim. I mean a person that's being used to do the will of the enemy unbeknownst to yourself. Now you're a victim of the enemies. Because a lot of times when we think victim, we think people that have gotten harmed. No, there are a lot of victims that have never gotten harmed, but they've been used to harm. Did I say that right? Eve was most definitely a victim. And then Adam became a victim. See, one of the things that we have to learn is if we can be mindful that we're always under a spiritual, we're always in the midst of a spiritual warfare, I promise you how we will operate differently. Even in situations where ain't nobody bothering us. Because all of a sudden you start to see, oh, they trying to set me up. They trying to get me. They trying to get at me. Listen at this. Jesus has come and conquered. The war's already won in the heavens, which means that guess what? We have the right to be victors. We have the right to actually claim a victory because of who Jesus is. We don't have to be victims. We become victims when we forget that there's a spiritual war going on. Here's where the battle lies. The battle lies in the fact that guess what? We often forget that we even in a war. Let's just be honest. We so busy. Let me go on. Who got Matthew 28 and 18? I think it says, if you ain't got no mic, don't be over there. And Jesus came. We praying.
And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth.
Now, when Jesus said this, we now have the privilege of having an eternal relationship with God. Many of us enter into that covenant of salvation by grace. But the Matthew 28:18 verse is not only about salvation, it is also about our everyday victory, which adds up to a victorious living in Christ. It not only adds up to us having the right to have a relationship, but right here, it gives us the ability to live a victorious life. Now, question, what do you consider a victorious life? And I don't want no answer. What do you consider is a victorious life? Because what you consider a victorious life is what's going to be the catalyst to how you live. Because a victorious, how many of us can see a situation go sideways and then I don't act the fool as being victorious? That makes sense? Makes sense to you? Because I know the enemy wanted me to pop off. I know the enemy wanted me to go straight left, but because I understood what the enemy was trying to do to me and I held fast to the profession of my faith, I consider that being victorious right there. And now my flesh ain't gonna relate to what my mind and heart is saying. My flesh is saying, I can't believe you let him do that. I can't believe you let her say that. I can't believe you let them treat you that way. I can't, how many of us go through that? Oh, they disrespecting you. But how many of us can say, even though they disrespected me today, victory is coming? Why do you think I sing this song, It Won't Always Be Like This? Yeah, you disrespected me today, and you're going to disrespect me tomorrow too, because I'm going to dwell with you according to knowledge. So I already know when I walk in the door how you're going to behave. And since I know how you're going to behave, I understand that with the enemy. And I try to figure out to myself, what are you trying to do to me? Because as catalysts and the people that carry the word of God, this ain't about what they doing. It's about what the enemy is trying to get you to do, because you're the one that's supposed to be the so-called saint of God in the room. That's why your response is the most important thing. That's why people always say, oh, so your husband a preacher. You know how many times I've been in situations where people don't even call me by name, they just call me pastor. And the enemy understands that, so what the enemy wants me to do is step outside of who I'm supposed to be in God and act a fool, and so they can say, look at that pastor. Look at that, she called herself a reverend. Look at him, he called himself an elder. Look at how he acted. Oh, you're a mother of the church? I can't believe it. What kind of church is that? How many times have we heard it? And yeah, we're human and we all make mistakes, but what we have to be understanding of is the enemy is coming to discredit not you, but the God that's in you. That's why we get all the crazy thoughts, people. Because if the enemy can get you to act a fool, what I tell you, tip after tip, just sit still. No, it's 2 times you should never make a decision and never move. When you're too happy, when you're too mad, or too sad, sit still. Because I promise you, in both of those situations, you're going to make a wrong decision. All you do is sit still. It's going to be hard, but if you just sit still, sometimes God will put you in a sleep. Who said that?
One of the ladies in empowerment, she was saying that God had gave her a shut your mouth spirit to not say anything.
And guess what? People don't understand it when you, especially when you're fighting. Especially when you somebody that throw them hands at a heartbeat. And especially when you don't mind throwing them hands and the enemy will put you in a situation, and especially when you're quick with your mouth. And God say, don't say nothing. And you just be sitting there thinking to yourself, I can eat you up right now. Even that thought shouldn't be there. Even that, because a lot of times when we get into that situation, and say, how many people know? I was saying something the other day. I was talking to somebody at the job, and I said, people always disrespect us. That would bother me. And they said, well, Curtis, what do bother you? I said, I just want it to be fair. Right.
Good luck with that. Right.
That's what, if I got an Achilles heel, that's my Achilles heel. When it stopped being fair, I have to really pray, because that's when I lose myself. I don't care about you not liking me. I don't care about you don't care for me. None of that bothers me, but when it's not fair, I just need it to be fair. Anybody else like that? Just be fair. I don't have to win. I don't need to win if it's fair. So we have to find that thing in our life that triggers us to forget about that so when I understand that, I understand that the enemy is always going to come at me in some kind of way where it's not fair. And guess what? When people are doing things to you and you don't get to tell your part, you know what eats you up? You get to tell your part. You know why? You know why it eats you up? Because you don't feel like it's fair. They told their part, I want to tell mine. But they're never supposed to be fair when the enemy knows that that's your Achilles heel. That's why you can't let it get out of pocket. You have to and one of the things that we're excellent at is, if that's our issue, we got a justification for it. There is no justification for forgetting that I'm in the midst of a fight. There is no justification. And guess what the law says? If you're in the middle of a fight, the moment you become the aggressor, you got to stop. Because then it goes from defense to assault. How many of us can recognize when we're winning spiritually? Because if we don't recognize it, what happens is it goes from following God to sinning. You never heard it that way happen. It goes from, and there's a fine line. Today I learned some bad news about one of the ladies. Y'all don't know her. She used to be my boss when I first went to Strongville. She was my boss. And then she ended up leaving, and she went to another school, and the day she tendered her resignation, they allowed her to resign. So people were celebrating. And I said, you think she'll drive for us? And everybody looked at me like I was stupid. I was serious. Because in a time like this, people need to work. Is she horrible to work with? Yeah. But you ain't the boss now. You just be a bus driver. And somebody said, Curtis, you would actually hire her. I said, in a heartbeat. I said, you think I like y'all? And I hired all y'all. I deal with y'all every day. I say, this ain't about who we like, it's about right and wrong. Now you say, well, Curtis, why did you bring that up? I brought that up because of this. Guys, the moment I start celebrating somebody else's bad time, I crossed the line. I don't have to like them, and they could have necessarily done some damaging thing to us. But the moment I start being happy that you falling on hard times, I crossed the line. And God will put you in a place where you can see. I'm not excited because this happened, but how many people realize that when we start celebrating, guys, we just as wrong. We're just as wrong. Let's go on. It says, every day, victory is achieved by knowing, believing, and understanding the battles that we are enduring all day, doing daily. Regardless of if we're passive or active in the battle. Oh, I don't remember when I read that, I thought to myself, you know, there are a lot of people that are active. Like when Frisco is active, she gonna get at you. But then you meet somebody that don't say nothing because they're real passive, and they get at you in the background. And then because nobody saw them get at you. Anybody ever been at somebody, people do stuff to you, and nobody see them doing it to you but you? And you the only one in the room know what they doing. Anybody ever been in that situation? You the only one in the room know what they doing. You know what's going on. It's meant to bother you and meant to do this, and nobody else in the room knows that. And because they're not saying that, and then they cause you to pop off. And then everybody say, oh, look at that demon seed. But we have to always remember, guess what? This is a spiritual fight. I can't allow the enemy to control my mind, because if he controls my mind, he controls my moves. That's why the Bible says we should guard ourselves. Let's go on. Do you want all that God has for you on this earth, or do you want to wait until you get to heaven to receive your victory and blessing? I don't know about y'all. I want all that God has for me right now.
Yeah, really.
I do. This Bible study on understanding the battle of spiritual warfare will give us a foundation on where, how, and what the battle looks like in our lives. We're going to examine three main areas where the battles are fought. The first one is the spiritual battle, the worldly battle, and the battle within us. So we're going to start tonight with the spiritual warfare battle. Here's the question. How do we know that there's a spiritual realm? If we cannot see it, should we believe in it? Many believers and unbelievers today do not want to deal with the world that we cannot see, when the world we do see is hard enough to deal with. Before we can discuss the spiritual battle, we have to believe in the spiritual realm. I want to stop right there. If someone would have, I meant to ask this question before I read that. How do we understand the spiritual realm? If somebody said, what's the spiritual realm? What would y'all say?
I think if I were asked that question, just like you just did then, I would basically start out by saying it's beyond what we know and see. And then it's not out of our opportunity of learning, but it might be out of our opportunity of seeing.
Okay.
And that might sound complicated, but I really believe that's true. The other thing too is that, and when you were talking earlier, I was thinking about, this may be not a good idea. Even though we don't see the baby that's in the mother's womb, we might see her enlarging, but we might see somebody that overeat enlarge as well. But we accept the fact that there is a living being inside that womb, even though we can't see it.
And we operate.
And we talk to the baby. We play music.
As if that baby is there.
Absolutely.
And we treat the person different. We treat the person differently. Yes, Myra, you should say something.
I was just gonna say that, just piggybacking off of Reverend Frisco, that we don't see the wind, but we know that is there because of like the leaves and things blowing and things like that. So when we're talking about the spiritual realm, when you were saying, just say, for instance, if we say a word and we're acting, how we're acting, and it's how we respond to that is the importance of it. So if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I got a funny thing. When I was in my master's program, this lady said that she was spiritual. She said, we were talking about something, I can't think what it was. She said, we don't see the wind, but we know it's there. I said, what's the difference between oxygen and wind? She said they're the same thing. I said, no, it ain't. She said, yes, it is, Curtis. I said, no, it's not. And we had this big old fallout. We had this big old fallout about oxygen and wind. And I think it's important for us to understand that. I like the example he used it. He said we have a tendency to act like a 2-year-old child who closes her eyes and places a blanket over her head, really believing that no one can see her because she cannot see them. Just because we cannot see the spiritual realm does not mean that it is not there. So then, this is where our faith comes in. This is where our faith comes in. And I said to somebody one day, I said, why do you think the enemy spends all this time trying to unconvince us of something that God says is true? Because basically, that's what this is all about. God says this and the enemy says he's a lie. That's basically what it's all about. I heard somebody talking about how when Eve ate the fruit and everybody has their own take on that. But the fact of the matter is, guess what? Nothing took place until Adam ate. And it does not make Adam more than Eve, or Eve less than Adam. But what we have to understand is, even though when they ate the fruit, they didn't die immediately. They still did. Come on.
No, I didn't want to cut you off, but you triggered something. When Adam and Eve sinned, it was in the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
When Satan sinned, it was in the spiritual. Mm-hmm. And it happened way, way before it ever came on the face of the earth. So the spiritual war has existed a long, long time. But what...
I'll go one better with you.
I'll help you.
The cause of the war is what is always the same. All you gotta do is pay attention. What was the cause he got kicked out?
He disobeyed.
That wasn't the cause. What was it? He wanted to be like God. What did he say to Eve? What do we fight in the church now? Because now his cause caused him to be a disobedient servant. And I agree, he was disobedient. But his whole thing was, I can be like God.
But he was like God.
Okay.
He was an idiot. But he God. Because he said, let us make man in our image and after our own likeness.
Mm-hmm.
And he also said, he created them. Created came before made.
Mm-hmm.
He created them male and female. And then he
Mhm.
talked into the spiritual world and said, let us make man after our own image and after our own likeness. What was it about Adam that was not like God?
But the point I'm trying to get to is how Satan got kicked out.
Well, that's the part.
So, because what Satan did was he took that same cause and put it in Eve. Because guess what he said to Eve?
Sure, you want
He don't want you to eat it because he don't want you to be like him. Right. So we have to understand. And now I need you to think about something. Think about every issue you always had with somebody. They either wanted to take your place or be more powerful than you.
Yeah, that's true.
Does that make sense? After all them years, I'm going to take your place. When I was doing nothing and you were doing everything, now I came along and I'm going to take your spot. Because that's how the enemy is. That's what that is the age-old cause. There's a thing in science called cause and effect. The cause was, I can be just as powerful as you can be. The effect of it was sin. And anytime you get to the place where you want to be what somebody else, you want to take something somebody else already had. I say this to people all the time. People tell me, I can't believe you let your preachers preach that much. I say, I ain't scared of nothing with no gift nobody else got. My gift is my gift. Their gift is their gift. We're supposed to be brothers and sisters because guess what? When they're preaching, I learn just as much from them as I hope they learn when I'm talking. And how many of us understand the moment I start being jealous of Reverend Frisco, we got a problem?
And why?
And why?
Because that's the flesh.
But it doesn't. But the only reason we can say but why is because we're in the midst of a spiritual warfare conversation. People, when they forget that it's a spiritual situation going on, it's easy to creep in and have the issues. Because guess what? There are a lot of people in your circle that want what you got.
Let them keep walking.
There are a lot of people in your circle. They want what you got. They want it because they figure, guess what? First of all, I can be her. Or I can be him. Or I can be better than him.
Why she got it anyway?
But if you go all the way back, that's the age-old cause. It all goes back to Satan saying, guess what? I can be like God. And it ain't hard when people cannot, when people cannot keep their minds wrapped around. I'm gonna need y'all to help me bring the food to church over there. I have to say that before I forget it. Don't be laughing, I'm talking about all y'all. I'm talking to everybody in this room, except Mother Frisco and Devin. I need y'all to understand the moment we forget it is the moment sin becomes prevalent. And I'm going to say that again. The moment we forget it is the moment sin becomes prevalent. See, when we can keep our mind, think about how you, I'm going to use the Reverend Frisco term. Mother always said, it shouldn't be like that. And I always say to her, you are correct. It should not be like that. But the only time it's not like that is when we are reminded of the moment. Our church there should be no dissension in here. There should be no downgrading. There should be all of the backbiting and stuff that go on amongst saints should not be so. But it only is so because we forget that we're in the midst of a spiritual warfare, and the enemy has to cause us to fight each other, because if the more we stay together, the stronger we are. the stronger we are. And there are different personalities within the body. Because some people are nurturers, some people, so I'm a feeder. And I know I am, and I don't have no problem with it. A feeder. I'm a feeder. I'm that dude. I don't have a problem with that. You're a nurturer. That's why sometimes when people need a hug, I don't hug them. I call a hugger. I said, I need you to put your arms around them because guess what?
Is that why?
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. That's why. And if somebody need a stern word, I send them to that right there. And she don't have no problem getting at them. But you have to recognize that. But in the midst of you hugging and in the midst of you correcting, I know it's all going to be in the midst of a spiritual realm. It's never going to be from a fleshly point of view. Because I tell people this all the time, and I don't ever want y'all to forget this. Stop dwelling on something all day and all night and then go sleep and dream about it, talking about I had a vision.
It was a nightmare.
No, done. That's right. It was a nightmare. There was no doggone vision. The Lord came to me. No, he didn't. Knock yourself out somewhere at least 6 times. We done ran out of time, but I want to read a little bit of this. Part 1 is spiritual warfare battle. How do we know that there's a spiritual realm if we cannot see it? I read that part. So Keith Green, I want to read this and then we're gonna do the scriptures next time. Y'all read them scriptures and then we're gonna talk about them next time. But it said, Keith Green, a Christian songwriter, wrote, I used to have to sneak around, but Satan, talking about Satan. I used to have to sneak around, but now they just open up their doors. No one's looking for my tricks because no one believes in me anymore. However, if we choose to ignore or not believe in the spiritual realm, we will find ourselves confused, frustrated, and quenching the peace that God has promised each of us. Pause. When you stop believing that there is a spiritual realm, you will always find yourself described here as confused, frustrated, and peaceless. Hoodwinked, Shabbat. The best defense is a strong offense. Just educating ourselves about the spiritual realm is half the fight, and God gives us everything else we need to be victorious on the other half. I'm going to say this and then we're going to get out of here. Whenever you find yourself frustrated and in a bad situation, I need you to remember that you're in the midst of a spiritual warfare. That's it, that's all. Now, once I remember I'm in the midst of a spiritual warfare, now I have to go to the point to know the word of God, to know that God said, I'll never leave you nor will I forsake you, so I'm not alone here. And God said, there's no good thing I would hope and then they'll walk up right before me. I might not see it today, I may not see it right now. I'm going to tell y'all something I've come a long way with. When I'm driving and people are in my way, so-called. I've understood that maybe God didn't want me speeding right there. I've understood that God is maybe slowing me down for some reason. There's a spiritual reason I don't need to be flying. So I don't need me being that upset with the person in front of me and just take my time and when they move. And evidently God said, now it's time you can go get it. Yes. And those are the victories that guys we gotta have. When my mind is not resting, that means that the enemy has a plan that he has put in motion to keep me from being peace. Because the Bible said, I'll keep you in perfect peace. Mind stay in peace. If you keep your mind where it's supposed to be. And it takes practice. It takes practice. Because when the enemy realizes that you're trying to combat when he's thrown at you, he turns up. And he tries to harm you as much as he possibly can. But we already know that we have the victory. I just got to trust God more than I trust him. Anybody got any questions? Anybody got any answers?
When you know your fight, you know how to fight.
That's right. Y'all, I need y'all to hold on to this and bring this back next week. And we're gonna get into the other two parts because I think the other two parts are gonna be very helpful for us. I usually go to something else, but I wanna finish this because I think it's very important for us to understand how the battle within the spiritual warfare. Now, I meant to say this at the beginning. I like the term battle because a battle and a war is two different things. There are several battles within a war. How you come out in the battle determine how you win the war. Does that make sense to everybody? So moments that you're feeling all these things, understand that the devil didn't win the war. He just won a battle. Do that make sense to everybody? All right. Mother Stephanie, pray us out. Mike.
Father, we give you thanks for bringing us back into your house one more time, learning the lesson that we need to learn, Father. And as we go from this place, Father, let us find our homes like we left them. In Jesus' name I pray.